few weeks ago, Martha and I were able to go and visit a place that's been hard to find for probably thousands of years. And so we went to where they have the ark now. It's in Kentucky. So we went to look at the ark, and we saw a lot of different things that there. And so we're going to try to do 3 presentations this month. And the first one today is going to be from the beginning, leading up to going into the ark, and why we had to have, or why God deemed it necessary to have Noah build an ark. We start over in Genesis 1. In Genesis 1 through 5, we see the first day. And this is the creation chapter. In day 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the surface of the water. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. And verse 6 through 8 is day 2. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters," so that God made the expanse to separate the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. So the evening and the morning was the second day. And then verse 9 through 13 is day 3 of creation. Then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathered together of the waters he called seas. Then God saw that it was good. Then God said, we're still on day 3, verse 9 through 13. So then God said, "Let the earth produce vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees, and earth yielding fruit after the kind with seed in them." And it was so. In verse 12, the earth produced vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees yielding fruit with seed in them after their kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning was the third day. And verse 14 through 19 is the fourth day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heaven to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs to indicate seasons and days and years. Let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Then God set them in the expanse of the heaven to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. Then God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning was the fourth day. Verse 20 through 23 shows us the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens." So God created great seas, creatures, and every living thing that moved, with which the waters swarmed, and according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let the birds multiply on the earth." So the evening and the morning was the fifth day. Verse 24, we see the sixth day start. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth creatures according to their kind, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kind." And it was so. So God made the beasts of the earth according to their kind, and the livestock according to their kind, and everything that creeped on the earth according to its kind. And God saw it was good. But then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Male at this time, female soon to be. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Then God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielded seed. It shall be food for you. To every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, which has the breath of life in it. I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning was the sixth day. And as we move from the first chapter of Genesis to the second, Genesis 2, verse 2 and 3, we see day 7. And on the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he had rested from all his work which he had created and made. But there's questions out there. Were the days of creation 24 hours each? Just like our current days, each of these days were marked by an evening and a morning, indicating they were normal length. When Moses received the 10 Commandments, God told him that the people were to work 6 days and rest one day, because that is what he did when he made everything, which we can see in Exodus 20, 8 through 11, if you want it for your notes. You know, God created a perfect world. Genesis 2, 8 through 15 shows that he did. He created the perfect world and put man and beast in there. Just think of all the many thousands of flowers and trees and shrubs that we don't even have available to us now. The beauty of all those blooms and those trees that would bloom and have lots of different fruits on them that we don't have available to us now, that were possibly in the Garden of Eden. You know, we saw in Genesis 1 that all creation was very good. There was no suffering. There was no death. You know, since God is perfect, it makes sense that his creation was perfect. At least it was until sin entered it. You know, some people object to the notion of a perfect creation, since the first man and woman had the opportunity to rebel, or if you would, sin. In their view, a perfect creation could never become perfect. This confusion is a result of shifting one definition of perfect to another definition. When the claim that creation was perfect, it uses the most common definition of the term. It was without fault or blemish. Not a less common meaning that refers to something or someone that is incapable of corruption, like God and our brother Jesus Christ. In Genesis 2, in verse 16, through Genesis 3, 1 through 7, the planting of the Garden of Eden, the warning, the making of woman, and the fall of man. You know, we see the command to Adam to tend the Garden of Eden. You know, all was good for food, except for verse 17 says that the tree of good and evil was not for food, or you will die. God told Adam that he was free to eat from any tree of the Garden of Eden except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It seems pretty easy. You get to live in this perfect world. You just cannot eat from this tree. And the Lord also warned him that the penalty for rebellion, or if you would, sin, was death. And then one day, the serpent tempted Eve. He told her that she would not die if she ate the fruit, but instead her eyes would be opened and she would be like a god. When she saw that the fruit looked good for food, delightful to the eyes, and desirable for wisdom that she had, Eve ate from the fruit. She then gave some of it to Adam, and he chose to eat it as well. In Genesis 3:13 through 19, we see the curse, that Adam's sin brings death. Adam's sins brought death and the curse into this world. The Lord reminded Adam that he would die. Man was created from the dust of the ground and would return to the ground upon death. God then cursed the serpent and the ground, which would now produce thorns and thistles. God also stated that a descendant of the woman would one day crush the head of the serpent and be wounded in the process. And then if we look over in Genesis 3:7 through 8 and verse 21, I think I'm on the wrong place. Andrew, can you tell me which slide that's on by looking at yours? Do what? Yes. I believe we're on number 7. There we are. Okay. Genesis 3:7 through 8 and verse 21. It shows us God provided a substitute, the first sacrifice. Knowing that they sinned against God, Adam and Eve attempted to hide from his presence in shame. They sewed fig leaves together and covered their nakedness. Although they deserved to die for their sin, God showed mercy and provided coverings for them by killing at least one animal in their place. In Genesis 3:22 through 24, we see God banishes Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden to prevent them from eating of the tree of life and living forever in a fallen and cursed world. God banished Adam and Eve from the garden. He sent angelic beings called cherubims as guards with flaming swords to prevent anybody or anyone from returning. Sometimes I think, mind wanders and goes places where it shouldn't probably, but I'm just wondering, is that still out there? That nobody has stumbled upon this place ever? I'd be scared to death, probably faint and die if I ever stumbled upon it myself and saw the flaming swords. But I want to see that garden one of these days, to see what all was in there, see what type of plants and trees they are, because we don't even have a phantom of knowledge of what that might be. I hit too many buttons. That's what I'm doing. Right there. In Genesis 4, as we go along getting closer to going to showing how much of a sinful world and why God might want to eliminate what he created. In Genesis 4, 1 through 5, we see Cain murders Abel. He became the first murderer. Adam and Eve had many children. Among them were Cain and Abel. Cain worked the ground, and Abel raised flocks, or if you would, animals, and pleased the Lord by offering the best of his flock. But God was not pleased with Cain and his sacrifice, some of his rotting vegetables. He wasn't pleased. Burning with anger, Cain lured Abel to a field and murdered him. And as punishment, the ground would no longer yield crops for Cain, and he was sent out from the presence of God. And these next two, in Genesis 6, 1 through 8, we see the pre-flood world was exceedingly wicked and deserved to be judged, except for one man, one person, Noah. And you can see that, yes, the wicked deserved to be judged, except for that one man, Noah. So what does the Bible say about Noah? In Genesis 6 and verse 9, which this is what all of us are striving to be said of us, Noah walked with God. We are told in Genesis 7 and verse 1 and Ezekiel 14 and verse 14 and also verse 20 of Ezekiel 14 and 2 Peter 2 and verse 5, Noah was a righteous man and a preacher of righteousness. And we see in Genesis 6 verse 22 and Hebrews 11, 7, Noah faithfully followed God's instructions. Just think, can this all be said of you and I to the 100%? Noah probably was not perfect. Neither one of us are. But I would like to have that said of me, and I know you would like to have that said of you. What was Noah's profession? The words of Lamech, Noah's father, may indicate that he worked hard at farming the land, taking care of cattle, farming like most of the people did. Thus, Noah may have learned how to plant crops and care for animals at an early age. He may have been captivated by small cargo ships on a nearby river. Young Noah longed for adventure in his lush world. Working on a farm, I can see some of these little farm boys, 8, 9 years old, running sophisticated GPS-driven tractors, combines. I've seen some of these kids welding at 8, 9, 10 years old, better than a professional welder sometime. They knew how to use tools. They were taught on an early age, and I think Noah was. Genesis 5 and 29 tells us Lamech called his name Noah, saying, "This one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed." And then Genesis 6, 14 through 17, we see the call from God. It says, "You will make an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it with pitch, inside and out. Here is how you will make it. The ark's length shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and the height 30 cubits." There's several different types of cubits that are known to man. And, you have the Hebrew cubit is 17.5 inches. You have the Egyptian, 17.6 inches. You have the Babylonian, it's called the royal, it's 19.8 inches. And the Hebrew long is 20.4 inches. and the Egyptian royal is 20.6. So when the ark that was being created and built in Kentucky, they went with the Hebrew long cubic, which is 20.4 inches, and it's from the tip, this is a cubic, 20.4 inches, from the tip of your fingers to your elbow. 20.4 inches. Normal. Some are longer, some are shorter, but that's what the cubic was. And you know, we don't know what the cubic length that Noah used to build the ark, but you know, we know that it's a large-scale construction project, and so you know, eventually, if they use the long one, you know, the dimensions is you know, when you look at it, the cubic is 20.4 inches from tip of fingers to elbow. That means the ark was right at 510 feet long. That's a little over a football and field and a half. It was 85 foot wide and 51 feet tall. That's about a 5-story tall building, if you want to try to figure out the size of it. Now we continue on with his instructions that God gave the calling to Noah. It says, make a window for the ark, finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door in the ark's side. One door in the ark, put it in the side of the ark. Build it with lower, second, and third decks. And next week, I'll be showing the rendition and pictures of what the design of the ark from the inside, from the designers that built it. And so again, it's his interpretation of what possibly how it was, and everybody has an interpretation of what it might be. It's just this is what he came up with to make it seem like it fits the story of the Bible. Then we were told why. He told Noah, behold, I will bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all flesh under heaven, in which is the breath of life. Everything on the earth shall die, except for your family, Noah. If you'll go ahead, Andrew, and start that. The next few pictures that I'm going to show you is from a distance and all the way up to the base of the rendition of what these men thought are the ark. I'm about probably twice that distance of that ark away from it, taking this picture. And when we get into seeing some of these different pictures and different things of why possibly the ark was built the way it was, then we'll be looking at some of the pictures again that we see here. You can tell we're still about a football field away. This is Martha and her mom. We're still walking up to the ark. You see the ramp and the one door that they had in the side of the ark. As we get closer, you can probably see the size of it, because if you look at the ramp that goes up, the ramp probably went to my hips if I was walking on that ramp, the railings. This is the front of the ark, and the way the design on that is to take away from all the wave, to keep it from lifting that ark up and smashing it back down, to actually split the waves. And this is where I want to start this next time. We're all going to be welcomed into the ark this next week. And Noah's is in his 600th year. And much has happened. His father, Lamech passed away 5 years ago. And his grandfather, Methuselah, died in the past year at the age of 969. 7 days ago, the Lord commanded Noah to enter the ark along with his family. So Noah and his wife and their 3 sons and their wives spent the past week loading the animals and are now storing the last of the provisions on the ark. They need to hurry. The storm is almost here. And that's where we'll end for today. And next week, I'd like to show the inside of the ark and some of the myth of what might have taken place and some of the different animals and how many animals possibly were in the ark. And then showing how they got rid of the waste or grew vegetables. I'll show the rendition of what the ark is like. We'll go ahead and end with prayer. Most holy and loving Creator God, we come before you again here at the end of this little message. Just ask that you would be with us the rest of the service, be with our fellowship, and help us to appreciate all that you do for us and for what we can learn from your scripture. Just ask that you would continue to watch over us all and be with us in the second portion of this service and be with all those that are listening in to where we can have an enjoyable Sabbath. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.